Hello everybody and welcome back to Purgatory. My name's Cody and this is Sephazon.
Hey guys, welcome back to your favorite circle of hell, featuring us.
I don't think Limbo is actually a circle of hell. I think it's meant to be the place.
No, it's not. It's the mountain. It's the mountain.
It's
technically,
the place in between, right? In Dante's.
In the comedy, Divine Comedy.
In the Divine Comedy, like there's the circles, but then there's like the in between place where they put like Buddhists or whatever.
Buddhists, specifically Buddhists.
Well,
yes, I am God, and okay, so this is hell.
I'm not an expert on. I'm not an expert on the Divine Comedy by Dante, but from what I remember, there was like the idea was that there was this area that wasn't heaven, but it was like no one's torturing you. We can put the nice people who aren't Christians here, like the Buddhists or whatever.
Okay, so there is so technically that is the outermost circle of hell. Is that place is where people who weren't necessarily bad, but they also didn't accept God's divine plan, technically as it were, went there. Now, purgatory is for people who ended up converting very, very late in life or on their deathbed. And in order to get out of purgatory, they have their own basically self-inflicted punishments that they have to resolve. Which is what we're doing here, obviously. See?
Yeah. That was definitely self-inflicted.
Yes.
So
this entire game is self-inflicted pain for you.
I mean, I think that's the point. I think the reason it's called Limbo is that there's meant to be a whole. This is meant to be some sort of it's unclear whether you're dead or not.
Well, I'm sure the audience feels that after watching you play this game like this. Got some saucy commentary.
I'm playing it relatively well. It is a difficult game, as you can see. Sometimes the floor is just made out of electricity. Look, this is what happens in Purgatory, I think.
Yeah.
Look,
it is. Yeah.
I'm not.
It says it right there in the Divine Comedy.
I'm not the expert on the Divine Comedy, as I said. What I know about the Divine Comedy is mostly that it was used so that the guy who wrote it could spite the people he didn't like who were alive by claiming that they were going to hell, like popes or whatever that he didn't like. He would just insert. This was fan fiction. The Divine Comedy was fan fiction about him putting people he didn't like into different circles of hell, which, amusingly enough, is a fan fiction that people confuse with the Bible, actually, because if you ask just a random person about, what does the Bible tell you about hell or whatever, they'll probably go, oh, well, there's 9 layers. On the 3rd layer, there's the adulterers or whatever. And it's like, no, actually, this is the Bible expanded universe. This is not anything
the alternate universe.
Yeah, this isn't anything that appeared originally. This is just sort of all these extra stories and things.
We're making as we go, as it happens.
It's the same with what's that the famous story about the fall of Lucifer or whatever.
Yeah, that's not in the Bible.
But do you know what story I'm talking about?
Yes.
Like the famous old story. None of that's in the Bible, but people just sort of. It's fan fiction about the Bible, so people just sort of go, "Oh, that's close enough, right?" That's or they really distinguish, because most people haven't read through the Bible, which is fair, because the Bible is big and there are long parts of it that are lists of people's genealogies, where it's like this person was the son of this person, and that just goes on for chapters, telling you about whose kid this person is. I tried as a kid. As a kid, I was in. Oh, ouch! I was at a sort of church that was what's the term? Do you have
a terrible kid?
Do you have AOG churches in America?
I have no idea what that means.
All right, I'm trying to figure out how to talk. It's the kind of church that plays like modern music with guitars and everyone's out the front jumping up and down. Like
yeah, weird churches, got it.
Like it's not the kind where there's hymns and stained glass windows. It's like they meet in the building of a school and then they play some like music with electric guitars and stuff.
Right, and then by the end of it, they're all saying "Hallelujah, praise to Jesus." For the record, I did grow up Catholic, so there is that. I'm from the perspective of you go in, you sit down, you get on your knees, you sit up, you repeat stuff in Latin essentially. You sit down. It's very I wouldn't say streamlined, but it's very traditional. There are no clapping. There is no hallelujah. It's just not really changed much in 2,000 years.
I think it's changed a fair amount over 2,000 years, actually.
I guess.
If we look at the history of the Catholic Church, the modern Catholic Church has not told anyone that it was okay to invade England in the last 1,000 years, which was a primary point of contention in 1066.
Does World War II count? Just kidding.
I don't think they got permission from the Pope.
Anyway, oh boy. I just watched Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan today, so what a day that was.
That was a day. But yeah,
much tragedy.
If you were wondering
about this death,
we made the decision at the start of this episode, let's only talk about Limbo. And then we went, what if we only talked about Limbo, the Christian concept, as opposed to Limbo the game? And we tried to roll with it, but then you started talking about World War II, so I guess the jig's up. We lasted 7 minutes, but that was pretty good.
No, the jig isn't up. I think we could have saved it. I was good because I was going to mention in high school, somebody, I think it was for AP History or something. I cannot for the life of me. Oh my god, now it's all relatable now again.
Yeah.
I will say,
that's the surprising thing is we started talking about World War II, and they've got Gatling guns trying to mow down the protagonist. You just talked about Saving Private Ryan, and the game responds.
Dude. Oh, come on. It's in my head. No, I was going to say, it reminds me, I think it was AP History in high school. We had a list of books we could write on. I mean, this is about 7 years ago, so pardon me if I don't remember this exact, but I remember one of the books was, it featured the Divine Comedy, and then it was Dante's Inferno, some various translation of it.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody saw the phrase, the Divine Comedy, and they selected that for specifically Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
And they were giving their presentation for it, and then our teacher was standing there with, kind of looking confused, and eventually, as it turned out, the person misinterpreted the word comedy in this, and was trying to find humor in it.
Uh-huh.
Not really a funny book.
Look, it is a divine comedy in a sense, which is to say, it was very funny to the author to be able to put the people he didn't like into various circles of hell.
This is true.
But in terms of puns, I'm not sure. If there were any... This is an interesting gravity puzzle, by the way. If there were any puns, we probably wouldn't recognize them because they need to be... Because that's the thing with Shakespeare, is this is what people don't realize about Shakespeare if their English teacher isn't any good, is Shakespeare wrote, gross out humor.
Oh yeah, he liked them sex jokes.
He was just constantly being like, haha, this person, is peeing or whatever. And it's like, well, that's great, Shakespeare. But then everyone's just like, oh, he's so literary. You know? It's everyone's like, you should listen to these works of Shakespeare. This playwright who actually just wrote theatrical plays that made the common people laugh because they were about... It's the equivalent of just like trucker comedy or whatever in modern day, where they, you know, you get this stand-up comedian or whatever, and they're like, you know, there's a snake in my boot.
Yes, the amazing comedic works of Cody Davies. Thank you very much. I will say that I do see your point, and it does always seem that people who are, as the phrase goes, according to Reddit, very smart, usually do go towards the Shakespeare route of, yes, when I was 7 years old, I was already reading a Shakespearean quote as well as practicing Bach and Mozart on my violin and or piano.
Yeah.
Get on my level, you noob.
Right, and it's like, the reason that Mozart wrote piano music wasn't because he was a hipster. Like, he just got given a piano. Like, he wasn't doing that to be posh. Like, if he was in the modern day, there's no reason he couldn't be Kesha. I just want to put that out there.
Fair enough. That is a question I wanted to ask Grant Kirkhope at MagFest last year. I wanted to ask him, and I didn't get the opportunity at the time, was if you had access to today's technology for video game arranging and composition, do you believe you would have composed the same music? That was my question I wanted to ask.
Because that was kind of the point when I don't mean that he would literally be Kesha. I mean that, like, maybe back then, you know, people were just like, oh, I hate this modern music. It doesn't have the feeling in it. This Mozart, these kids these days like Mozart, they don't understand. They don't understand the you know, the classics, the hymns or whatever.
I guess.
You know, Mozart and his piano. Kids these days, you know.
I guess you could say they didn't understand. I wanted to say this down there. They didn't understand the gravity of the situation.
Don't worry, the gravity thing's still happening. As you can see, that box just flew upwards. So
no, that just happens on a regular basis. I don't see anything wrong with that. That's just a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Did you really try to go for that just now?
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering if I was crazy or not, thinking maybe he's really just hoping for the best.
Look, you gotta believe. So...
I don't believe. I believe.
I do believe in fairies.
I think you would make that.
So yeah, look, this is my thing about like music or whatever. People... Because if you go into a video from like the 90s now, you'll find a bunch of... Yeah, that was a nasty gravity death. You'll find a bunch of people who are eulogizing how great music was when it was like the Backstreet Boys.
Jump cut. And
they were like, you know, what happened to the classics like the Backstreet Boys? Nowadays we've only got like, you know, these noobs. And it's like, you know, you just have to realize that every generation thought that their own generation of music wasn't you know, as cultured as whatever the old people were listening to. You know, the Backstreet Boys are not... I mean, it's funny because we're still close enough to the Backstreet Boys that we realize they're not classical, but the Beatles were a boy band that we now think of as...
the best.
Like, the absolute pinnacle of art. Like, everyone has to appreciate... Like, if you don't appreciate the Beatles, you don't understand art. But back in the 60s, there were a bunch of, like, teenage boys who were like, I hate these floppy-haired Beatles. Why did the girls always talk about them all the time? You know? It's the same way that they did about, like, Justin Bieber. I'm not saying Justin Bieber had the same artistic talent as the Beatles, just that the reactions never change.
Yes, and they would have been written into one of the circles of hell in Dante's Inferno. We've come full circle. I tried. I pushed really hard here.
I'm not sure which one. Let us know in the comments.
That was an episode.
That's a good episode.